Alright, hello there. I am on my way to have a few hours of skiing on a nearly 60-degree February day in New Jersey, because I had a couple of free hours between some of the stuff the kids needed to do and other stuff, so figured why not go enjoy it, test out the new skis, take the Tesla up. But on the way, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the interesting things that I have found around charging on, or as part of our plan to take a road trip up to Stowe in Vermont for a long weekend family ski trip next week. So stick with me and we will talk about it. So next week we are planning on taking a family trip up, all 5 of us, and actually meeting some friends up in Stowe in Vermont, which is one of my favorite places to ski, at least on the East Coast. And we're going to be taking the Tesla up there again for the 2nd year in a row. And what we had done in the past, actually I guess this is the 3rd time that we're taking the Tesla up there. But last year what we had done, and are pretty much doing the same thing this year, is taking 2 cars up. So since we're meeting friends and they're traveling out from the West Coast, they won't have a car, so we need 2 while we're up there. And it also just helps with getting up there with the kids for their nap schedules and eating and everything when we have to worry about charging. And so with that, I started doing some of the planning for the way up there. And since we've got the Tesla, it's actually not so bad. There are a whole bunch of supercharging stations on the way up there. And then once you're kind of in and around Stowe itself, there are a decent number of like public level 2 slower chargers that we can use to just kind of keep the car like topped up almost while we're there. And then the best thing is, I'm trying not to like fully depend on it, but the place that we're staying at, the Airbnb, is the same place we stayed last year. Really nice place, and they have a garage that you can use, and inside the garage there are some 110 outlets, and last year at least, like plugging that in, we were getting fairly decent rates. I forget exactly like what in kilowatts, but it was enough that at least like we were essentially able to replenish whatever miles it took to drive from that house to the ski slopes and everything on a daily basis. So kind of helped us stay at a reasonable level so that we didn't have to freak out while we were staying there and like go do an emergency stop at a restaurant or a hotel or something with a level 2 charger. So kind of planning on the same thing this time. And one of the challenging things about some of the more remote places where these ski resorts are is that even though they might have a bunch of like Tesla destination chargers around and some like public level 2 charge ones, I found that the like fast charging networks are usually not super available around there. And so for example, on like one trip that we had done up to Stratton a couple of years ago, what I failed to do was plan to get there with the car at a high state of charge, so that we kind of had a buffer and like a bank that we could draw from while driving around there, and also accounting for the fact that when it's cold and you're driving around, you get a lot less range, and with the car parked outside in the snow and ice overnight, you actually will lose some range too. I had basically just done what the car told me to do to get up there, which charged on the way up, but got me into town with like 20-30%, something that seemed reasonable. But after 2 days of driving back and forth to the ski slope and having a car sitting outside and stuff, we were like basically getting to the point where I wasn't going to have enough to get back out of town to the next charger. So that was pretty stressful, and I learned a lesson there that you need to plan for arriving with a fairly high state of charge. So plan this time is get up there, and the closest supercharger, maybe not absolute closest, but like the kind of closest on the way that is a V3 250 supercharger is kind of between Burlington and Stowe. So the plan is to get to that one, with like almost as little as possible, so I get up there as fast as possible with probably just one stop on the way to get enough to make it there, and then do a nice long stop there, charge as deep as I can, probably up to 80-90%, which should work out because the plan is that I'm going to leave early and take our 2-year-old up so that he can take his nap in the middle of the day while we're driving, and then I can get to that supercharger and stop and we'll grab some food for dinner while the car charges. So from my experience like that, I've been to that charger before. There's like a diner there. There's also a pizza place that I really want to go to because it's one of two. We had gone to the other one in Burlington a few years ago and it was really good. So there's plenty of options there. And so last time that we had stopped there, kind of on this trip, stopped for dinner, and because that charger is so fast and it's kind of out of the way, like there was nobody else there, and by like the time we got food and everything, I think we were able to charge. It took almost an hour and we charged nearly to full basically. So I'm planning on doing that again, so it should get us there plenty. But anyway, as a result of that, I had been doing a bunch of research on what the charging situation in and around there is, and despite doing this with the Tesla, I was curious what it might be like in the future when we potentially have our Rivian. So our Rivian R1S, I got updated order window now. Seems like they're kind of narrowing them in a little bit more. So instead of a full year estimate of somewhere between January and end of December of 2024, our R1S order that we're now coming up almost on having it out there for a year, or like having ordered it a year ago, is now updated to be January through June of 2024. So I'm hoping that kind of continues to like push up toward the front of that. I'm guessing that it's probably going to be either right at the end of this year that we get it, or like very early, kind of Q1 of 2024. Just based off of like where I'm seeing other orders starting to get fulfilled and the ramp up that they're doing in production. But it depends how they do this year with ramping up further and everything. So still optimistic that there's a chance if we do this trip next year in February that we'll actually have the R1S. So with that, I wanted to see what it would be like if we take that car up next year. And so since that is obviously not able to use the Tesla supercharging network, although who knows, by that point maybe things will change and they will fully open it up, since it seems like that's that's what they're doing across the rest of the world, and there are signs that they're planning on doing it in the US. But for now, at least, it means that we would be dependent on CCS based charging infrastructure, and for fast charging that means primarily Electrify America and potentially like ChargePoint, EVgo, some other things like that. So anyway, so I looked into that, looked at PlugShare just to see what's available there, looked at like the EA app, looked at a better route planner, which is usually kind of my starting point for planning these trips. And actually, if you're interested, if you're a new EV owner or someone going on a road trip for the first time, I did make a video on kind of what I do when I'm planning out a trip, which generally starts with a better route planner, but then I kind of modify it from there. So make sure to check that out. But so doing that for the R1S was basically showing me that it would take almost an hour longer. So I think between 45 and 50 minutes longer for the Rivian than it would for this Tesla Model Y, because of the charging network availability, or kind of lack thereof. And then the problem is they're even further away from Stowe, and so arriving there with a high state of charge is really kind of the main problem. Like I'd have to charge to just about 100% somewhere around Burlington to get into Stowe, with upward of like 80% or so. And then with the R1S having such a bigger battery and thirstier one, I would worry about being able to charge that off of a 110 outlet at the house. So it'd be even more important for us to get there with a high state of charge, and probably have to utilize some of the public level 2 chargers there. So the good thing is a bunch of the touristy stuff like the Ben and Jerry's factory and some of the breweries that we like going to and stuff, there, as well as even the ski resorts generally have level 2 chargers, but some of them are just a pain to get to, and you also don't want to really be sitting there for like 6 hours if you have to do a substantial charge in the car. Speaking of just sitting, I'm not sure what just happened, but we're on the highway and have just utterly stopped. So this is not looking great. But anyway, yeah. So and part of the big reason for that big discrepancy with the CCS charging network is that there are fewer chargers, they're generally slower, and they're a bit more like off the path of the highway and in the route up to Stowe than the Tesla ones are. And so you'd have to do a little bit of a detour to get to an Electrify America one somewhere in like upstate New York. And then in Vermont, the situation is really kind of worse, and there aren't EA stations. I think you end up being dependent on I think it was EVgo that was up there, and they're slower chargers. So you especially with again a battery as big as what the Rivian has, it's just going to take longer to fill that up. So it's just something we have to kind of plan and account for. Means that instead of taking a road trip up that would take about a little bit over 6 hours in a gas car, it would take about 7 in a Tesla, and about 7.5 to 7 hours 45 minutes in a CCS car. So it does definitely add on to it, and something you have to plan for. The good thing is, I think realistically, for us with the kids at the age they are, it really isn't a big deal. Like, we're having to stop fairly regularly anyway for bathroom and food breaks. So honestly, we'd be stopping probably those number of times anyway. But just less of a convenience factor with the CCS car. So anyway, something I wanted to talk about and share with people, just to see kind of what the differences are on a realistic road trip like this one. May not be something that you do all of the time in an electric vehicle, but definitely something you want to understand and account for if you're shopping for one or starting to figure out your first road trip. So yeah, with that, let me know in the comments below what road trips are you planning on taking in your EV. Any questions that you've got about what it's like to road trip, and let me know what experiences you've had on EV road trips in the past. You seeing similar things, challenges and problems with the charging infrastructure. I think that this is something that is only going to kind of become worse right now. Like, even with infrastructure getting built out more now, it's certainly not keeping up with the pace of how many electric vehicles are being sold. And especially for CCS-based cars, I think the build out of the fast charging networks like EVgo and Electrify America are just really not keeping up at all with the pace of the cars that are out there on the road now. And so the times and stuff that I gave before, that's not even accounting for potentially having to sit and wait at chargers because they're highly in demand, or because ones are broken and not working and stuff. That's a whole nother thing with the CCS network. Is the reliability is way lower than the Tesla one. So like, going up with Tesla, I know that chargers are going to be available and be working, and I can see it very easily right here from the car. And the car will even like reroute me in case there's high demand at any of these. But in my experience, driving up this way on a weekday night is not going to be any sort of problem. But that's not necessarily the same case when you're talking about an Electrify America station that may only have like 4 stalls, and there's only one in a 300-mile radius, and 2 of the chargers are not working. Much better chance of like having to sit there and wait. So just another thing you also have to plan and account for, and can be a big frustration point. So anyway, yeah, I'll definitely share video on the actual road trip up there, and you get to come along with me to see what that drive is like, and how the charging and everything works, and what it's like to be around kind of a ski town with an electric vehicle. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of that. With that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.